Hello everyone, welcome back. Patrick here. Welcome to the SPAC Arena. Today I have an exciting company to talk about. It's going to be my review for GMHI, which is going to be merging with Luminar. So I'm really excited about this company. A lot of you are invested in GRAF. This is their direct competitor, and to me, like we'll see. I mean, I feel like their technology is on par, or maybe even a little bit better. So, is this company going to make you a millionaire or is it going to make you bankrupt? We'll talk about that right now. But of course, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I'll see you in a second. All right, guys. So as usual, the review is going to be split in four parts. The first part is what is Gores Metropoulos and Luminar? What about their management? Then we'll talk about the state of the autonomous driving technologies, because Luminar is competing directly with Velodyne, which is going to be merging with GRAF. A lot of you might be invested in it already. So why would you pick one over the other? Then where do I see this market and company going? And fourth, how am I going to be playing this stock? So before I get into all the specs for Luminar, I just want to briefly mention the management team. I feel like it's more important than ever because we've seen that the bad ones cause delays, right? If you think of OPES. In this case, we have Alec Gores from Gores Metropoulos. He's had several SPACs before that merged, right? So we know that he's going to be able to lead us to victory. And that's very good for us. I'm very bullish about that. And then, of course, you have Austin Russell, the CEO of Luminar. Very impressive young guy. He created the company in 2012 while he was in his teens, and they worked on it underground for a few years. And then I believe in 2017 is when they like revealed what they were working on, and since then the progress has been phenomenal. Tons of partners, which we'll talk about in a minute, and he's giving Velodyne a run for its money. So very bullish on the management team. I think that they'll get us to the merger quicker than some of the other ones. All right, so now we can finally talk about their technology. What is it that they do? Well, I've done a ton of research on this in the past 2 weeks to get a really good understanding on what the companies are doing, where the technology is, and where we're going. So, for those of you that have studied graphs, like you might know this due diligence already, but for my other viewers, let me give you a quick description. So, when it comes to autonomous driving, which is what the hardware that Luminar does helps with, you have 5 different levels. And right now we're at level 2, which is driver assistance, and that's mainly where Tesla is right now. So they still need you to look at the road to make sure that the computer and the car doesn't make a mistake. Otherwise, you have something like this happen. Because right now, even though their technology is improving significantly, they're still not there yet. They still make mistakes. So you need to have the driver pay attention to the road. So that's level 2. When it comes to level 3, that's when it starts to get a lot better for us eventually as drivers, is when you don't have to pay to the attention to the road anymore. Like the car just knows what it's doing and it's not going to get into crashes, especially on highways. Highways are seen as much easier to solve as a problem than cities because every car is driving in the same direction and there's just not as many variables. Usually the lanes are better indicated and there's not going to be as many obstacles. You won't have a kid running into the street on the highway, right? Maybe you'll have a deer, but then the car is going to detect it. You understand what I mean? Like there's not as many fringe cases as there is in cities. So this is level 3 and that's mostly where the companies plan on being in 22, 23. Now, level 4 and 5, that's when there's full autonomy, where the car does everything, but not just 99% of the time, like almost 100% of the time. It knows what to do in every scenario. And this is where Luminar's technology in Lidar is seen by some as necessary. So the two competing technologies right now is LiDAR, which is basically sending lasers out. The lasers come in and it helps map out the environment. And then using that map, the computer in the car detects obstacles and kind of plans out what path they're going to take and what path it should take to avoid those or brake when it needs to and everything. Then the competing technology is Tesla's. So Tesla is still one of their main competitors in a sense. And what Tesla does is it uses cameras to visually recognize the obstacles as opposed to using the laser beam, right? It uses the cameras and it kind of detects what each item is. Like it detects this is a fire truck, this is a pedestrian, and then it tries to predict what it's going to do. And it builds its own map. So each of those have pros and cons. Tesla says, well, the problem with LiDAR is, let's say that there's a garbage bag here, right? Well, it might detect that it's an obstacle, but it won't detect what it is. So, maybe it's going to break even though it shouldn't. So then on their end, LiDAR companies don't say anything about Tesla's technology that's negative. They just say that their technology is great to do like something quote unquote simple, like driving on the highway. And we even know that Tesla can do some city driving. But they don't believe that it's enough to get to level 5. If you think of a company like Volvo that's partnered with Luminar, everything they do and they say their entire branding is about safety. And they seem to believe that LiDAR is going to be that missing piece, that missing 1% that gets us closer to level 5. So this is where you guys need to make your own opinion and decide, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that Tesla's technology is going to get developed enough to do everything on its own, right? And make this unnecessary, like Elon said before? Or do you think that companies are going to keep going with LiDAR? Because this is going to matter as far as the size of the market. If eventually Elon figures it out and they don't need LiDAR, well, I mean, this technology might become redundant and the market's going to be smaller. But if it proves that the LiDAR is necessary, that's really good for Luminar because there's going to be one major company that dominates the market. It's going to be probably either Velodyne, which is with GRAF, or it's going to be Luminar that's merging with Gores Metropoulos. And this is where we have to seriously look into Luminar's technology, is when we look at their really, really amazing partnerships. Right now, according to the investor presentation, which as usual I'll link in the description, they have 50 OEM and other commercial strategic partners, including 7 of the world's top 10 automakers. So as of me filming this, they're not going to implement their technology in 7 of the 10 world top automakers, but they're at least having a partnership to research and develop it. Now, the one company that they do have this that the technology is going into their cars is Volvo. So I talked about earlier, Volvo is all about safety, and in this case, they feel like LiDAR is useful, and so they'll be implementing it on their cars. And this, of course, is really good for Luminar because it, as it says here, it de-risks the industrialization and it enables economies of scale and accelerates widespread adoption. Basically, it gives them kind of proof of concept. When a serious company like Volvo adopts their technology, it signals to everyone else, hey, like, take this company seriously, right? They're actually delivering on their promises. And also, the contracts are kind of sticky in the sense of once you implement that in your car lineup, well, the next year you're probably not going to go with another company, right? Because it took years to research and develop the technology, build a strategic partnership. So the more serious partners they can get like that, the better it's going to be for Luminar. It's going to be very difficult to go with another company afterward. So Volvo's the first step. We can assume that there's going to be more in the future. And on this slide, we see some of the tech specs. So we won't go into all of them, of course, there's no point. But this one shows that the OEM requirements for autonomy, like what the car manufacturers determined is required for the level 5, well, Luminar already has it achieved in 2020. So the range performance at 250 meters is above the other ones. Now, these are the companies that are their competitors. Their main competitors, as far as I could research, is Velodyne and Innoviz from Israel. I would assume, I believe that company C is Velodyne, and it's the only one that's somewhat close. They do have series production. They are auto grade, meaning that you can put it on a car and it's going to work. But the rest, they don't quite match. Right now, Luminar has an edge on them because they were able to really miniaturize their equipment and make it functional. What the problem was with Velodyne, as far as I could tell, is they had this big system on top, right, that was spinning, but as they miniaturized it, instead of making it as performant but smaller, they had to lower the receptors on it, right? And the range and everything. So instead of having 250 meters, they have 35 meters at 5% reflectivity. That is, let's say that an object is black, right? It bounces less off of it. So that's really important, especially in low visibility conditions at night, or let's say there's fog. There's a lot of different conditions that have to be matched for level 5 autonomy. And right now, Luminar seems to be the clear winner. Like, they seem to be well ahead of the other ones. Even though Velodyne for years and years and years was the leader, seems like they're losing a step. All right, friends. So now let's look at their partnerships and then we'll look at their revenues. And now they're going to bring us back money as shareholders. So these are just their target partners, right? And this is all of the ones that you would expect from car makers. Everyone's working on self driving cars. The only one you won't find on the list is Tesla. Tesla is kind of like the Apple of car makers. They do their own architecture and they do their own systems. They're not like really working with the other companies. And then, of course, you have the trucking industry that wants to do self-driving trucks to save money on the truck drivers. Well, one that I found interesting, and I knew you guys would find interesting, is Nikola. So yes, Nikola maybe will partner with Luminar. That would be pretty good for us in the SPAC world. It would be very interesting. Then, of course, there's a robotaxi. This is the battleground of the future. Whoever wins that is going to make a fortune. So, of course, you have Waymo, you have Uber, you have Tesla that wants to compete in there, and then you have all the companies are trying to build their fleet and find the right technology combination. And Luminar is going to be working with some of these dudes. Now, if we look here, this is one of the more important slides. This is the current partner funnel by stage. This one is really important. Right now, they have 24 people, or companies rather, that they're in the validation stage with. Now, they have 10 that are in the advanced development contract with. So, that's getting fairly close to being real partners in implementing that technology. And then series production, when we have Volvo that we talked about, that means that technology is going on their cars. It's a done deal almost. And then there's one that's undisclosed. Well, that's really good. We don't know who it is yet, but that's going to be a major catalyst when they announce that. Keep that in mind. If we don't know when that is, but eventually when they announce that they have a major partnerships with another major automaker, that's going to boost the stock value by a lot. And this is where it gets tough, is when we get into the actual revenue. So we have a lot of strong partnerships. That's great. But where are we at in terms of making money? And this is where it gets tough because it's the type of company that's very speculative. It's in the future. We have to project ourselves years in the future and hope that they actually deliver on their promises. So if we look at the timeline, they're not going to start mass production into the cars until Q3 2022. And then if we look at the actual financial highlights, like the revenues are minuscule, like ridiculous until even into 2022, right? They're not making any money basically. They'll be losing money. So 2023 is when it's going to start picking up. But then if they can actually get there, that's when it's going to ramp up significantly. That's when they expect to get more than 100% per year in increase in revenues, because that would be mass scale adoption of their technology. So again, earlier I asked you, do you think that this technology is going to be necessary, or is Tesla going to win the race? Well, if this company as like if lidar becomes one of the mainstay of the self-driving cars, I mean, you can expect that there's going to be mass adoption and the revenues are going to explode. So this is what would happen in 2024, 2025, and same until 2030, right? Um, Now, this is what I talked about earlier when I did the first look. This is where it's really interesting. It's the margin that's going to be really good. In the beginning, they have a lot of fixed expensive, a lot of R&D, but as we get to mass production, they feel like most of the other tech companies, they feel like they can increase their margin significantly. So on every unit that they produce, they'll be making 61% or 64% profit. And that's where the company becomes a cash cow. So this is going to be the last slide. Let's talk about their actual valuation. Gores Metropoulos gave them a 2.9 billion valuation, which I think is high, right? Because they're not going to be doing anything before 2024, really. But this is the market we're in. Technology companies, EV companies, the valuations are through the roof. I mean, as of me filming this, Hyliion is at like $12 billion valuation pre-merger. It's just crazy the valuations that people are willing to pay. So at this case, like in this case, 2.9 billion almost feels like a discount at this rate. So this is where you have to decide, like, do you believe in this technology and do you think that Luminar is going to be a big player in a couple of years? For me personally, after analyzing all of this, I feel like they have a pretty good shot. So now it's just a matter of, do I want to put my money in now? How do I want to play it? Like, what do I think is going to happen? So we'll look at the chart and where I see the stock going. All right, guys, let's look at some chart. So today, I'm filming this on Thursday. The stock market is down fairly big, and the stock price for GMHI is at 11.47. I like that a lot. The stock hasn't been doing anything really. Up until recently, it was below 12. In fact, it went below 11 2 weeks ago. So the stock is still under the radar, and I really like that. Uh, Everyone is focused on the other SPACs that are really hot right now. We know Tesla hit almost $2,500 before the split, right? And then you have Hyliion that's really hot, and some of the other ones. So there's a ton of money flowing into the SPACs right now, and I think that this has benefited GMHI because it's not merging until Q4. It's still kind of under the radar. People are putting their money elsewhere. So there's still good opportunities to pick up this stock. Right now at 11.46, I think it's really good. Right? If we look at the warrants, it's at 303, which would give it a redeemable value, as far as I know, of 14.53. So for me personally, right now, I feel like the stock is a better risk versus reward. You're just risking quote unquote pre-merger 146, and I think that it's going to do really well. Like your risk is very small for how much the stock can go up. The warrants, I feel like at this stage are a little overpriced. Like people have been bidding up the warrants a lot lately, and I mean, the thing is you can get still almost 4 warrants for 1 share. So it really depends how you want to play it. You can get a little bit more leverage with the warrants, but you have less protection. It's up to you. Personally, right now, I like the shares. I would be looking to pick up some shares. Now, their main competitor, Velodyne, which is going to be merging with GRAF, is where it gets really interesting for us. Because you can see GRAF is at 23, and it's been going up significantly lately, right? They have a big ramp up from early July to, no, sorry, early August to now. They went from what, about $13 up to 25. Now they're at 23. Today went down. So you can see that there was a major ramp up for a company that's almost identical and even maybe worse than Luminar. So we can expect that it's probably likely that the same thing is going to happen with GMHI when it gets ramping up to the merger. Keep that in mind. Now the warrants are at 525, so the warrants are very, very low compared to the stock price. I'm not sure. I think that there was a lot of confusion with the 4-3 ratio. I don't know if that's why they're so low, but again, that's another opportunity there if you guys are interested in GRAF. But for me, I think that I like Luminar a little bit better than GRAF. Feel like their technology seems like it's more advanced and they have more potential for bigger partners. So for me, I'm going to be looking into it. This is my play how I'm going to be playing this. So there's 2 ways to think about it: short term and long term. I feel like this company is going to suck if you think about like 1 year from now. Because 1 year from now, the excitement and hype will probably have died down from the merger, and they're not going to be making a lot of revenues for 3-4 years. So the way I see it, this is a stock that you want to play really quickly, like short term, so the merger ramp up, or you want to really hold it for a long term, like you put it and you forget it. So there's 2 ways to play it, according to me, in my opinion, and I'm going to probably do both, right? I'm going to be keeping some shares to do short-term play, ramping up to the merger, and I might keep some warrants, especially if they can drop down in the twos. I'll be keeping some warrants that I want to hold for like 3-4 years. If the stock price stays below and they don't call them, I'll just keep these warrants for a couple of years. And I think that in 2024, this is when the company is going to really, really start ramping up. So I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Tell me in the comments what you guys think about this company. Which one do you prefer? Like, do you like GRAF or do you like Luminar better? And especially, do you think that the trend is going to be the same? Like, do you think that GMHI at 1147 is going to go up the same way GRAF did? To me, it seems very likely. So let me know what you think and how you're going to be playing it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much.